Welcome to Brand Builders TV. Deep dive topics, tools and resources brought to you by global thought leaders from within the Brand Builders Club. This show gives you access to the strategies that you can use to move forward with ease and flow in every area of your life and business. In today's show, Jean is going to share her overview of what it is like to go through the woman's midlife transition and what it's all about, its importance for women's role in improving our society, and how you can help. In this first episode, Jean explains her view of the process of change and the four-phase structure of the woman's midlife transition. She also offers you a practical way that you can help women to go through the first phase. Jean is the author of a book called Love, Sex and the Midlife Woman and founder of the New Midlife Woman community on Facebook. She's currently launching the New Midlife Women Academy with its signature course, Discover the Woman Within. Jean has a marketing background and has run various companies in the past, but now devotes herself to working with midlife women through Huxley Education Ltd, which is a non-for-profit social enterprise. So sit back and watch today's show to find out how she does it. Learn it, model it, and get shit done. Let's go.
And I want to talk to you today about the woman's midlife transition. So you may be asking, why is that significant or important? And I would say two things. It's important because it's a very significant change for the woman concerned as she moves from being a young woman into a midlife woman. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But it's also important from a social and society point of view because midlife women have a major contribution to make to improving our society. Indeed, you can see some stellar examples of that already, that there are not enough of them. And so in this talk, I hope we'll be able to see ways of facilitating more women embracing their midlife transition and moving on to great things. So the term midlife is comparatively new, and I first came across it in a book by Marianne Williamson called The Age of Miracles, Embracing the New Midlife. And that was very revealing because she explained that with modern health conditions and so forth, we have in midlife almost a rebirth because we have the prospect of another 40 to 50 years life as we go on. Whereas previously our parents and certainly our grandparents didn't really have much more than 10 to 15 years to live after they reached the midpoint in their lives. So the thing here really was that I owe a great debt to Marianne Williamson, and she has made a lot of books and so forth, but videos and things about this. But I've moved on, and now I wrote my book in 2016, Love, Sex and the Midlife Woman, and then subsequently went on to found the New Midlife Woman community as a Facebook group, and I'm now launching the Midlife Woman Academy. So I think that probably if you've listened this far, you've got three questions bubbling around in your head. The first one is, well, why does it matter to me if there's a midlife woman transition? And why should I bother to know more about it? And I'll say, well, that I've already said it's important both for the individual, who we would obviously want to help someone who is in a condition of stress, but also for society. But I'm guessing that most of the people who are listening to this are women, midlife women probably, who've either completed their transition or are well through it. Because in the course of this talk, I hope you'll recognize much of what I have to say as having been something which you have experienced, even though you didn't necessarily understand what was going on at the time. The second question you might be asking is, well, who are you and what gives you the right to talk about the midlife woman's transition? Well, I'd say two things that either qualify me or disqualify me from being authoritative in this area. One is that when I wrote my book, Love, Sex and the Midlife Woman, I made no secret about it about the author section, saying that I was born a boy and lived the early part of my life as a man. And you may well say, well, in that case, how can you talk authoritatively about the woman's midlife transition? It's a fair comment, but I have lived now as a woman for over 30 years, and I've enjoyed the company of many midlife women who've told me their experiences, their challenges, their stress and distress as they move through that period, and about their lives today. And I have to say, all that went into the book. I gradually really formed the impression that this was what was going on and was significant, and put it into the book. And then subsequently, as I said, have worked to build up support for midlife women going through this process with the new Midlife Women Community Face Group and the now launching new Midlife Women Academy. The second reason I think it might help is that a lot of the problems that midlife women have go back to midlife men. And I feel that I can give useful information about midlife men and their state of mind, what they are looking for. And that would make it easier for midlife women to get the love and support that they want from usually midlife men, and it make that side of their life easier and more fulfilling. The third question you would ask is, well, what did you find out about this midlife transition? And I'd say I found three things. Firstly, it is a natural process. And I should be talking, it's much more than just the menopause. It's a natural process which comes to the majority of women one way or another. The second thing is it follows a predictable pattern. And the third thing is that that pattern can be broken down into a number of phases, 4 phases I see it as. And I think it's helpful to see those phases separately because they help one to navigate through the transition to a successful outcome. So now we're going to look more deeply into the area of the midlife transition, which, as I've said, is a natural process, but it isn't easy. And I was going to tell you a story that happened in my life about a cousin that I had by marriage, who I knew quite well when he was younger, but then lost touch. Well, I just lived in another part of the country. And uh, he then invited me to his wedding. So when I went to the wedding, of course, I knew him, but I hadn't met the bride before. And I formed an impression um, as in that of her as being very sweet, charming, um, but if I may say so, insubstantial. But she was obviously very nervous, being her wedding day, so I wouldn't have thought she necessarily came across as that forcefully. But anyway, that was how all I knew about her. Subsequently, I heard that they had 2 children, and that she'd had a difficult time, possibly with postnatal depression. But subsequently, in running the household, managing the children, and possibly also working as well, all these things were she wasn't really able to cope. And fortunately, her husband, my cousin by marriage, was very supportive and able to help her during that period. So because they live in a different part of the country, I had no further contact with them until a few years ago. And I arranged with my cousin to meet at a motor racing event. And unbeknown to me, he came in a motor caravan. He was coming in a motor caravan and brought his wife. So I was absolutely amazed at the woman that I met. Here was this very together, authoritative woman who told me that she now was a registrar of births, deaths, and marriages. That's a responsible job, I'm sure you know, but it also involves marrying people. And you can't be a weary wimp doing something like that. You've got to have that gravitas. And she certainly had all that. I thought, where's this woman come from? So different, unrecognizable from the woman I remembered of the wedding, perhaps 25 years before. So that was one of the examples of the midlife woman transition that went into my head and the mix and so forth, which came out with my subsequent ideas. And I met many impressive and successful women who are through the midlife transition. And the one thing that I gather from all of them is none of them had an easy journey. And this is regrettable, but probably necessary in the process. Before we knew about the midlife transition, we only really had the term menopause. to guide us that something was happening, because obviously there are serious major physical changes that go on at this time for midlife women. But the main thing is that it was a serious source of shame and embarrassment, and so women didn't talk too much about it. They just put up with it. But when women did talk to each other about it, they made no secret of the fact that it was horrible. And they felt very isolated, alone, got very little medical support or even sympathy, just told to get on with it. So when I'm asked by women, do you have to have started the menopause before you start the midlife woman transition? I would say not necessarily, because the early symptoms of the midlife transition are a feeling that things are changing. Things that were previously predictable and under control are now moving out of control. And I'll talk quite a lot about the earthquake zone, but I can imagine living in an earthquake zone where you have tremors and so forth. Your big concern, your big fear is, will they get worse and turn into an actual earthquake? And when these uncertainties start, it's very distressing. And with it goes quite a lot of emotion, fear that you're no longer in control. And if it does get worse, could it lead to a total meltdown, or what used to be known as a nervous breakdown? So all of this conspires to make the woman feel very uneasy, very stressed, and very distressed if it's really bad. Because I shall be talking about some of the factors that contribute to that. But I've given this area the name confusion, because that's really what the woman feels, confused, that things that she felt were under control are no longer so and could be getting worse. Now, the analogy which I use here, which I hope is helpful, is of a caterpillar in a chrysalis turning into a butterfly. So we can imagine, well, if we could try and imagine what goes on in the chrysalis, this caterpillar started off creating its own cocoon, then going into it and falling asleep. Sometime later, it wakes up and becomes aware of the fact that it's now entrapped in this chrysalis that it's created, and there's a degree possibly of panic, if caterpillars stroke butterflies can panic, and concern about how to get out of it, and certainly a certain amount of struggle. So while we're imagining, can you imagine a butterfly flying past and seeing this struggling bag of the chrysalis and flying down and whispering into it, "Don't worry, you are in the process of changing, and you will one day escape from this chrysalis and become a butterfly with beautiful wings, which will enable you to fly wherever you want to." And then, well, in this story, the butterfly flies off, but it's done a lot of good because it's given the second ingredient in this phase of the midlife woman's process of recognition. And I'll give you a more practical example, which I probably experienced, of if you go to the doctor with an ailment and you describe your symptoms, and at the end of it, the doctor says, "Well, it looks like you've got, or sounds like you've got this, that, or the other. And I'm not going to give you any medication, but I suggest you take these steps to look after yourself and make yourself more comfortable. And you'll find that within a few days or a week or two, it will go." Now, the amazing thing is, when that happens, is you feel better just by being told what's going on. Give it a name, and also a feeling that other people know what it's all about and that you'll be all right. So recognition is very important. But the problem is that for many women going through the midlife crisis, they're so upset, so emotional, that they don't not readily able to listen. So it needs gentle and occasional, periodic mentioning that this is a natural process. They will get through it, and there's good stuff on the other side. So I said that I do my best to help in this area by the foundation of the New Midlife Women Community as a Facebook group. And now we are launching the new Midlife Woman Academy with a number of programs to help midlife women through this process. And individually, you can help. You can help by joining the Midlife Woman, new Midlife Woman community on Facebook. It's free. and put your two penneth in, but also hear and see what's going on so that you can help midlife women in distress who are going through some difficult times by telling them what you know, both from your experience and what we're able to assemble in the group. So let me go back now to the four phases. So we talked about the first one, which is called confusion and recognition. And its principal thing is fear of what is going on and what could happen and getting worse. The second stage I'm calling understanding and coping. So as a result of help and support from other people, or just even the passage of time, one begins to feel that, oh, right, so these are the things happening, the particular issues of children growing up, instability of work, or dissatisfaction with work, excuse me, difficulties with partner, relatives being more demanding. All of these things are part of the process of change, things that are changing in one's life. And I feel that what one has to do here is separate on an individual basis which are the issues that are causing this distress, because there may be one or even two that are causing particular distress. And the second one is choosing what you can do something about. And this is where I quote this prayer, which you may have heard before, which is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change those I can and the wisdom to know the difference. You may have heard this before. Would you like me to read it again? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference. So this period is one of sticking it out, coping as best you can with the issues that are changing in your life, making demands on you, and knowing that it is part of a process which is going to lead to the third phase. And the third phase I call taking control and experimentation. Now there's a lot more room for maneuver. Some of the issues have resolved themselves, such as children leaving home, and then there is more room to start making those difficult decisions, which may involve such things as changing partner or changing career, and also experimentation, which is to try the things that you've dreamt of doing all your life and seeing whether you really do like them or once is enough. But either way, it's necessary to get those out of your system. And so during this period, one has much more freedom and it's perhaps more pleasant and more exciting, but very challenging, of course, if you're making those big changes in your life. And then finally, we move to the fourth phase, which I call purpose and passion. Once you've got your life as you want it, you have got a platform of love and security that will enable you to take off and find your purpose, which is usually aligned to your passion as well. May not be obvious to you now, but in due course it will become clear. And once you find that, you then become able to spread your wings and really fulfill your destiny. So these are the four phases which I talk about. But before I finish, I want to go back to talk about phase one, the confusion and recognition. There's a bit more to say about that. It is sometimes, in fact, actually, Google, you find a lot of people have Googled this midlife crisis, and that people are concerned about, women and men concerned about this midlife crisis that they've heard of. And the term originally was attributed to men, but the men's midlife crisis and the woman's midlife crisis are very different, both in term and cause and in manifestation. So for men, it's a concern that they're getting old, they're losing their mojo, they're losing their virility. They again tend to become quite introverted and morose and difficult to talk to because they are going through this period. I think, you know, that statue of the thinker, like that typifies the midlife man going through his maybe crisis or transition. Now, for women, there's a lot more external stuff that's going on. Oh, by the way, the manifestation that we talked about for the midlife men is usually fast cars and sometimes fast women, because they're most anxious to prove to themselves and other people that they're still up for it. Now, women have a much different journey. They are finding that certain things like children growing up, um, and leaving home, or potentially leaving home, work which was necessary, and they're quite willing to do that in order to contribute to the financial household costs and so forth. Now they look at it and say, is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? It's not very fulfilling. I want to do something more worthwhile, though I don't know what, and I don't know what I'm qualified to do. Also, the partner that served very well for the previous 20, 25 years, difficulties may be creeping up, and so there's a concern about whether they are going to stay with this partner, or whether this partner needs to be shaken up or something like that. And then we've got the health issues. There are many other health issues that happen in a midlife woman's body, quite apart from the menopause, which are part of the new person she is becoming. And then we've got relatives who previously supportive now become somewhat dependent, and they were another area of worry and concern. So I can imagine that if for a woman all these things hit simultaneously, then it's pretty close to a crisis. But for others, it's less so. But in all cases, I feel that we can help in one way by producing what I have done, the 7 steps to survive the midlife crisis. I think it's called 7-Step Survivor's Guide to the Midlife Crisis, to the Women's Midlife Crisis. And you can get a copy of that free. Down at the end, you'll find a link to do that. And you may find it useful, partly, if you like, to what you went through yourself, but also to help other women who you find are in stress or distress over something which you could imagine is the midlife transition. Doesn't have to be a crisis to be helpful. So please take advantage of that if you feel would like to. And I would then go on to say something else, is don't trust a word that I've said unless it fits with your experience and observation. In my many years of teaching people, I've always used this manifestation. Don't believe me, believe what you can see and experience, to see whether it's true. And I'm going to give you a little test here. I want you to think of 3 women who you've known for the last 20 to 30 years, or certainly a period long enough to include what might have been their midlife transition, and think about the changes that have gone on for them. Um, Now, I'd say to take it seriously, please write down the names of the 3 3 women you select, either on a piece of paper or in your phone. So as you remember things about them, you can slot them in as well as part of your test of the validity of what I'm saying about the women's midlife transition. And I would be very grateful to have your feedback on this. You can email me. My address is at the end, gene@lovemidlifewoman.com, and tell me whether you feel that you do have evidence to agree with what I've said so far, or otherwise. Now, I'm going to finish with a story. A story is a friend of mine called Anne, who at the early 40s, or early 40s, maybe the mid 40s, started to have some very unpleasant experiences, which were quite emotional outbursts, really. They were of just crying, or there could have been anger, frustration, and they really took her over. But she was a strong character, and within a few hours she would recover from them, or maybe including by going to bed for a while or for the night. And then she would say, I don't know what that was all about. I can't remember what set that off. So she was in some mystery and so concern about these things happening. Um, Now, later on, it became obvious, I suppose, that the issues that were hitting her, because she had no sign of the menopause at that stage, um, or she didn't say she had, or didn't recognize that she had, um, that certain issues in her life were changing. Her children were leaving home. Well, the elder one was already away at college. The younger one was leaving sixth form, leaving school to go to sixth form college. She'd recently given up a high-powered career as a financial director of a multi-million-pound company, and although she went in half a day a week as a consultant to keep an eye on things, her major roles had been given to other people. Third thing was that her mother had a stroke, and suddenly, from being supportive person who would look after the children, it was she had to be the sporty one, visiting her in hospital and at home. I think her partner was also developing certain interests, which made it possible that the relationship was going to come to an end because they would be incompatible. So all of the things, and then the health issues, which the body changes I talked about, quite apart from the menopause, would have been there. But actually, she did have pain. She'd had pain in lower down, and this was finally diagnosed as a growth on her womb, which was resolved by a hysterectomy. Now, in those days, it was a much bigger operation than it is today, involving a lot of body tissue loss and also 3 months of recuperation. And after that, once she'd fully recovered, I could see that she'd moved into a stage where she was now taking control and of the bigger issues, and so that she then went on. I remember she overcame certain demons. One was learning to swim. Another one was speaking in public, and another one was traveling abroad on her own. And all of these things, she set herself, I could see her set herself the challenge and then doing it and coming back a stronger person. So this was the experimentation period. She also got involved in certain other projects. She became involved in managing a number of small companies using her financial skills, and also got involved in network marketing, where she learned a lot of new things. And then she settled down, probably to, I would say, early 50s, to something which turned out to be her purpose and passion, which was building a property portfolio with the intention that this would be to support younger people getting on the property ladder. And that became a big preoccupation for many years, and also made her a wealthy woman. So I think if you look back, you could see the different phases. Now, it wasn't structured, we had no idea what was going on, but I think one could see that she dealt with the four areas, or not, she experienced the four areas and dealt with the later ones very capably. And from that, we can see a certain amount of evidence for the midlife transition, as I've described it in 4 phases. So that is as much as I want to say about the first phase of the midlife woman transition. And in subsequent broadcasts, I'll be talking about stages 2, 3, and 4. And I hope you'll join me on those, because if you've listened this far and found it helpful and recognizable, then I think you'll be interested in some of the further things that I've got to say about the women's midlife transition. So in the meantime, this is Jean Macdonald, the Midlife Woman's friend, signing off for today. Bye.
I hope that you've enjoyed the show today as much as we've enjoyed making it for you. If you've got anything out of this episode, please do tell someone else how they can subscribe to the Brand Builders TV channel at youtube.com/brandbuilderstv. Why not join us at our next Brand Builders Thinkubator, a global mastermind that we run every week to take away the loneliness of being in business on your own. For more information and to book your place, visit light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. That's light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. Until next time, be the ripple that you wish to see in the world, and we'll see you soon.